we're trying these tools new. So I'm Sofia Bahana with the Minority Business Development Agency, and we are here to bring you one more time a different topic webinar. So we do webinars, we do workshops on different topics to so you can learn. In this time, we are having Adaptation Consulting with Climate Awareness, Adaptation, and Resilience 101 for small businesses. So take advantage of this great topic, and please ask questions if you can do it through the chat, or you can do it through the questions and answers icon. So thank you so much for being here, and this webinar I will click on, let me see. Yeah, this webinar is being recorded, so you can we will put it after in our YouTube channel. So please, Brianna and Maxine, thank you so much for being here with Adelante Consulting. Please take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're also thankful to be part of this presentation that we have today to discuss climate awareness, adaptation, and resilience 101 for small businesses. As most of you are well aware, climate change is no longer a distant threat, but a present reality impacting our communities and businesses alike. So today we're going to explore some strategies to help your small businesses not only survive, but also to thrive in this changing environment. So we'll also discuss some potential opportunities and available financial support to help your businesses succeed. Thank you, Sophia, for that introduction. My name is Brianna. I'm an environmental consultant at Adelante Consulting, and I'm here with my other colleagues, Maxine and Samantha, who will also be providing their expertise and helping us go through this presentation. Okay, so this is the outline of the presentation. We're going to start with discussing what are the risks that to small businesses posed by climate change, followed by how these risks specifically impact small businesses. And then we're going to go into some details about how New Mexico businesses are already impacted by climate change. And then from that point, we're going to switch gears to talk about some different strategies and tools that people can use for their small business to build their business's climate resiliency, and also other mechanisms for financial support. So, starting with what are the risks to businesses posed by climate change, I'll let my colleague Samantha take over.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha again, and I'll be talking about what the risks are to businesses posed by climate change. So one of the primary risks that I'm sure we've all noticed in our daily lives is increasing temperatures. And in fact, 8 of the last 23 summers have been the hottest summers on record for New Mexico. And this graph here shows that nearly the entire state faces a high risk of even hotter temperatures in the future. So another climate risk is drought. And according to the US Drought Monitor, New Mexico met a record for drought duration just this summer. New Mexico has experienced longer and longer durations of drought since the end of 2017. And on this figure, you can see that we have been in a moderate drought or higher since the end of 2017. So with climate change comes an increase in extreme weather events, such as wildfire and flooding, which probably isn't news to any of you. Since the early 2000s, there's been an increase in the number of extreme weather events that have taken place in New Mexico, including droughts, wildfires, severe storms, and even tropical cyclones. These events can be extremely costly for the state, the people, and the businesses that it affects. So now I have a question for all of you. You can put your answers in the chat if you're attending now, or just ponder it on your own if you're watching this as a recording. Has your business been affected by one or more of these climate crises, or even one that we haven't discussed yet? Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone posted anything in the chat, so we'll just continue on. And now we're going to talk about how New Mexico businesses have already been impacted by climate change. So as some of you might know or even experience, water scarcity is an ongoing issue right now in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Restrictions on water usage have affected businesses that rely on water, such as agricultural businesses, and even non-agricultural businesses have been encouraged to close until the water scarcity and water quality issue has been resolved. So for example, rains from the monsoon caused the town of Las Vegas to reduce its water supply due to the threat of high levels of pollution in their runoff. Burn scars from the Hermit's Peak and Calf Canyon fire in 2022 caused high levels of turbidity in the Gallinas River, the main source of their drinking water. The town's water treatment facility can't process these increased levels of turbidity, resulting in non-essential businesses being asked to close. And next slide, please. So having to rebuild businesses in New Mexico after wildfires, wind damage, or flooding really takes a toll on the business owners. Potential roadblocks include delays in getting permits approved, the high construction prices for rebuilding, and perhaps there's other issues in rebuilding that introduce additional costs. So, for example, in Ruidoso, over 1,400 structures were destroyed by the South Fork and Salt fires. And additionally, Ruidoso heavily relies on tourists, and unfortunately, those fires began at the beginning of the tourist season. So you can imagine how much that would impact the businesses in Ruidoso. There have been substantial economic impacts to businesses in New Mexico in recent years, especially when accounting for the 2020 pandemic. While there's been some progress since then, small business owners in the state now face the challenge of having to deal with costs associated with climate-related disasters. Economic disruptions lead to things like decreased revenue, increases in insurance premiums, and inflation rates have been jumping back and forth and can differ depending on where you are in New Mexico. So as a result, any of these things can lead to job losses as well. And for example, insurance companies sometimes don't provide wildfire coverage, and most notably, State Farm doesn't provide advance payments, for instance, in the case of wildfire. And next slide. Thank you. So another risk to New Mexico small business owners is maintaining their health and labor force. Health issues caused by extreme weather events affect the employees and business owners by temporarily or permanently taking business owners and employees away from the business. There's also a reduced productivity from illnesses for health. And so, for example, in 2024, the New Mexico Environment Department reported over 600 emergency hospital visits due to heat-related illness. And as well, there was increased demand for healthcare services in order to sustain employee health. And so this graph here shows that as the temperatures are increasing, the blue and red lines, then at the same time, the MRI cases are increasing as well. So that shows the correlation between health, decreased health, and rising temperatures. And so considering these impacts that we just discussed, what are some ways you protect your business from these threats? And again, you can either answer in the chat or just think about them on your own if you're watching as a recording. And it looks like Vinayak said that they write grants and develop products to predict and mitigate the effects of climate change on public health, which is very cool. Okay, if there's not anything else, then I will hand it back off to my colleague Brianna.
Thank you, Samantha, for presenting the different risks that small businesses present to small business owners of New Mexico. Sorry, tripping over my words. So next, we're going to talk about the risk that specifically impacts small businesses. So we're going to start off talking about supply chain issues. So climate risk can impact small businesses in a lot of ways, but one way is supply chain issues. So when a disaster happens, this can disrupt delivery services of resources to one's business. This can also disable local vendors and contractors that are also experiencing disasters. And the consequences of this can include increased transportation costs. So maybe gas prices go up, or maybe your supplier needs to take a different route to avoid some of the effects of a disaster. So they have to take a longer route, which is more time and more money. Another consequence is lower supplier availability. So some of your suppliers might be focused on evacuating or taking care of their own businesses that are affected by different events, which leads into another consequence of delayed products or services. So resources that were expected to come in at a certain time might be delayed until further notice, and this can halt business operations until those resources are received. So next we have property damage. So a lot of you might have already experienced this one recently or in the last 4 years or even before then. But property damage from climate-related disasters can be costly, and in some cases, small business owners might have to temporarily close their business until the damage is taken care of. So the consequences that could arise from property damage include insurance costs. So insurance companies might charge more if there's excessive damage that's being seen for your building. Another consequence is reconstruction costs. So reconstruction is already expensive as is. And maybe for some affected by climate disasters, hiring a local contractor isn't an option. So you have to look outside of your community and hire a contractor from out of town, which can include, which drives up the cost further because you have to pay for their travel to your business to repair. Another consequence, like we mentioned, is temporary business closures. So sometimes it's necessary, and maybe even after a region has already experienced that disaster, sometimes businesses are still closed. So earlier when we talked about water scarcity, So even after the fires that affected Las Vegas, New Mexico, they're still dealing with the effects of that fire from the burn scars affecting the ground, which is causing them to have a water scarcity crisis. And then lastly, code compliance. So when you're reconstructing your business, you still have to make sure that your business's building is up to code. And maybe during the reconstruction process, you find that there are other issues that weren't necessarily a challenge before, like water damage or other structural issues that will also need to be addressed. So climate risk also presents challenges to small businesses' economic safety net. So also, we talked about earlier how climate-related disasters are costing New Mexico billions, and this trickles down to New Mexico small businesses who have to pay for the impacts to their business. And as a result, this can lead to limited government assistance for help with these costs because everybody's trying to apply at the same time, and it's hard to receive that money in the time frame that's needed, perhaps. Another issue could be use of emergency funds. So emergency funds that were maybe put aside for periods of slow business is now having to be used for an unexpected disaster. And if you didn't have any emergency funds, then maybe these costs come out of your pocket, which leaves you in an even dire situation. And then being underinsured is another big issue because a lot of insurance companies are shying away from covering certain climate disasters. And this is resulting in a lot of like businesses and other people just not being or being underinsured, or in some cases not insured at all in the case of these events. So now we want to hear from you about which of these risks that we discussed do you think poses the greatest threat to your business and why? And if you feel like this list didn't apply to you, are there any other climate related risks that we didn't talk about that you think affects your business more? So I'll give a couple of minutes, or I'll give about 2 minutes to hear from the audience. I can't see the chat, so if somebody is putting something, just let me know. Also, just another thing to add, especially for those watching the recording, um, answering this question, like maybe like when you're writing it down, this also can be a form of or a stepping stone to building climate resiliency, because this question is aimed at getting you to think about what are the ways that your business is vulnerable to climate risks. So it gets the mind, like the gears in your brain turning, like to kind of you to think ahead of time, like, okay, what can I do, or what is my business susceptible to? Okay, so I'm gonna move forward. And now we're gonna shift this presentation to talk about the different actions that small business owners can take to building their business's climate resiliency. So we're gonna start off by defining some concepts of adaptation and resilience. So when we talk about adaptation, what we're talking about is you're adjusting your business to the surroundings or the environment. And then when we talk about resilience, we're talking about your business persisting despite outside influence and slash or pressure from other climate related events. And then together, these two components are what's going to help you build your business's climate resiliency. So we're going to start off with a couple of adaptive actions that you can take, and like what they look like in the context of small businesses. And it's important to recognize that while we can't prevent 100% of the impacts of climate-related disasters, there are ways in which small business owners can mitigate some of the effects felt. So some adaptive actions include operational changes, supply chain diversification, and also product innovation. So starting with operational changes involve making adjustments on how your business functions. So as a result, these changes can boost energy efficiency for your business, maybe even increase productivity, and help with your business's ability to adapt to new challenges. So some examples of what operational changes can look like could be switching from paper to digital invoices if invoices are crucial to your business, or maybe changing work schedules, or even finding new ways to use the different tools that you're already using within your small business. So to put an example onto this concept, I like to use the example of like a farm that sells produce. So imagine there's a farm there that's striving to create a greater climate resiliency. So to cut costs and reduce their carbon footprint, they switch from paper to digital invoices and bookkeeping. So by doing this, they're creating a digital backup of their financial records. And this is an adaptive action because, in the case of a fire, or if there's a flood, or if anything happens, at least they have a digital backup of what all went on. So that way, if your papers all burn up or something, like you can still access those records. And then, another operational change that the farm might make is adjusting work schedules for their employees. So because like it's during the summer and it's getting hot, maybe they're like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have our employees start working earlier, so that and like finishing later, so that way we can avoid working in the hottest parts of the day. So that's another example of like an operational change that that farm could take. And then additionally, like maybe the farmers, they're interested in investing in solar panels. And as we'll discuss later on today, there are programs specifically geared towards small businesses that can fund energy efficient projects for small businesses. So maybe they look into those sort of opportunities, and they invest in solar panels and create some kind of like microgrid to help reduce or help increase their farm's energy efficiency. So next, supply chain diversity. So having multiple suppliers in different locations to protect your business from disruptions caused by climate change can be really helpful when operating like your small business. And an example of this will be like relying on or utilizing different suppliers in different counties and not just having one supplier for your small business. So, because when you're relying on a single supplier in one county, especially if that area is continuously hit by natural disaster, it can be risky for your business. So an example of this is, let's say maybe a store relies on a single supplier that uses a specific delivery route that is vulnerable to disruptions. Like maybe it's in the mountain and it's on a really curvy road, and maybe that area is frequent to mudslides or something. Then partnering with maybe another supplier in a different county might be helpful that way, because that supplier might use a different route that isn't subject to a lot of disruptions along their journey to your small business. So this can help protect against small chain interruptions, and that can go a long way. Okay, and then talking about product innovation is another type of adaptive action that small business owners can take to mitigate climate effects to their business. So this can be anything from improving goods or services to creating a whole new product. So these products or services can even be targeted towards the growing demand for climate-friendly solutions. So examples of this would include like a construction company, maybe they start offering building materials and services that are geared towards withstanding extreme weather events like flooding or wildfires. Or maybe they even start to sell new products like flood resistant flooring or fire resistant building material, things like that. And when small businesses focus on product innovation, they can enhance their resilience. And then they can also gain a competitive advantage because there's a growing market for sustainable products and services. Okay, so now that we talked about adaptive actions, we're going to continue on to talk about some resilient actions that you can take. So things like risk management, financial planning, employee training, and community engagement kind of all fall under the umbrella of resilient actions. So risk management is about using what you know about climate-related risks and other issues your businesses may face and planning ahead to lessen the effects of those impacts. So an example of risk management would be like having a climate emergency plan in place for your business or building resilient energy infrastructure. So, like say you have a business that is routinely subjected to power outages or higher energy costs because of the goods and services that you provide. You can invest in solar panels or in a battery storage system to create a microgrid to ensure your business stays running during power disruptions. And again, like I said, as we'll discuss later, there are opportunities specifically for business owners making these types of investments that can help cover these costs. So another type of resilient action is financial planning for your business finances. So as most of you are probably already doing, but this includes factoring climate-related cost as well as opportunities in your business budget and going over your insurance policies to ensure that your business has the coverage that you need. And sometimes this looks like switching insurance companies to have more coverage or paying some more to cover your business fully. So a good example of this is just to budget for climate related business expenses. So if there's a business impacted repeatedly by wildfires, one thing that they might do is prioritize reviewing their insurance policy every year to make sure they know what's covered in the case of property damage and business interruptions when these events occur. Another example of what financial planning could look like is maybe investing or putting your emergency savings in some sort of high yield savings account. So that way you have interest on those emergency funds when they're not in use. So that way when it comes time to use them, you have what you put in and then some. Now, if you're a business with other employees, taking the time to equip employees with the knowledge and skills to adapt to changing conditions and responding efficiently to business emergencies is very crucial. And an example of this would be to help your employees learn how to adapt to the different adaptive or resilient strategies you want to impose to your business. And training employees helps create a smooth transition from your business to a climate resilient business. Yes, so let's say like a construction company in a region is experiencing increasing heat and water scarcity is becoming an issue, then the business decides to train their employees on heat illness prevention and water conservation and first aid. So it's really important to communicate any new goals your business wants to include, that include climate resiliency. All right, and lastly, we have community engagement as a type of resilient action. And this one might even be one of the most important forms of resilient actions that small business owners can take. And this is because collaboration with other business owners and community organization allows you access to more resources and knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have known about. And it also encourages you to build a support system that which can be crucial in disaster related events because we're stronger together. And the best example I have of attesting to this is during the Hurricane Katrina event that took place in New Orleans, Louisiana. So the city of New Orleans, when they experienced Katrina, like after they had experienced Katrina, they had a lot of probably even similar struggles to other people experiencing climate-related disasters where they weren't getting a whole lot of support from FEMA and they were just really fed up. But one thing that they did was they really were keen on volunteering in their community, and they established mutual aid between businesses to help each other get back on their feet. And I think that's a really good template for how to establish community engagement and how that community engagement really helps in times like these. So the question that following this is what are some ways that you can establish your network for your business? Because networking is important. So um maybe this looks like getting to know similar businesses to your own, and maybe establishing a rapport with them just to, get your name out there and who's who, um, and really just think of different ways of how you can engage your community and your business. So I'll give a couple of seconds for this slide. Okay, so now I'm gonna pass the baton to Maxine, and she's gonna get into some resources for financial support.
Thanks so much, Brianna and Samantha. My name is Maxine Polly, Director of Business Development at Adelante Consulting. I'm gonna, as Brianna said, I'm gonna talk about financial support. So, I see we're looking at slightly different slides, but that's okay. We'll go with it. So we've talked about so far about climate impacts in New Mexico, how small businesses are susceptible, concepts of adaptation and resilience, and steps that you can take to mitigate and prevent some of the impacts of climate-related disasters. So now we'll get to resources for financial support specifically. And there's a couple different topics here. We have grants. You may think of grants as something for NGOs and for governments or for assistance, but there are grants out there for businesses as well. And of course, there's public-private partnerships where you may be providing support for a local public entity, and that is another way a grant can help you. There are loans out there. There are some federal loans that have super low costs, and there are programs like CPACE that we'll get into for specifically resilient infrastructure on commercial properties. There are tax rebates and incentives. We are not tax experts, but we can, we're going to give you a little list of that to go through and talk to, your accountant or tax expert about, to make sure you're not missing some of the new rebates and incentives, because there sure are a lot. There's a lot for businesses. You maybe have heard of some of them for, electric vehicles or for heat pumps in homes, but there's a number of these for businesses as well. And then we also want to provide you some resources for technical assistance, whether that's us, Adelante, or some of the aggregators out there that can work directly with small businesses. And, depending on your eligibility for a variety of things, you can talk to them. So let's get started with one of the aggregators. It's under grants, but we'll skip that one. Okay, yeah, we are. There we go. SCORE, great. So before we talk about specific grants, here are some aggregator websites or grant assistance websites that include climate resilience to weather-related events. Our intent here, we can't tell you about every single one in a webinar, but what we can do is give you some examples and give you some places to look for more information. I want to emphasize help is out there. There are people who want to do this. There are people who are paid to do this, and so you're not alone in this drive for help, for ways to become more adaptive and resilient, but you are the driver of the EV or the PHEV, so you have to be proactive if you want to get in these things. And so all these still require some work to even get the technical assistance. So hopefully this can get you on the right foot. But all these slides also have links. So folks, if you can get a copy, if you end up getting a copy of this, you should be able to click on each of these to move forward. Download them, take some time to read through the ones that apply to your needs best. So here's just an example company, SCORE. They provide grant writing assistance to businesses directly and aggregate grants, help you with workshops, advice, support, and sort of help you do some grant matching. They also help offer assistance with developing comprehensive checklists to prepare for weather-related events and establishing emergency or recovery plans for your business. These are, I think Brianna mentioned financial planning. There's other sort of checklists and plans that you can make. I really like their disaster recovery checklist. I think, when disaster strikes, we panic, and sometimes it helps to have, just like the home evacuation plans. It's good to have a disaster recovery checklist in case this happens to you or has already happened to you, to make sure that you've gone through all the steps to get yourself as much help as possible. They also have tons of blog posts too, so it's just good to listen. Supply chain disruptions, we talked about those. Further reading and self-education. So next slide, please. Here's another sort of aggregator site. So this one, there's lots of examples like this on the web. Again, we're just giving you a few of them. This is called Hello Alice. They help small business owners access financial resources. You can use it to make a tailored search. So like put in your terms, put in your type of business, what you're looking for. And you can also use it to connect with other small business owners. They do offer their own small grants, like a current opportunity on the slide for restaurants for disaster relief. It's up to $10,000 for those of you interested. This is one that closes September 3rd for the summer round, but there's a opportunity seasonally. And you can apply online. I believe you can click through. It's helloalice.com grants DoorDash. This one, for example, to understand, different grants have different eligibilities. If you're not already familiar with grants, in this case, You have to operate a brick and mortar location. You can't have more than 3 stores, and you have to be open for at least 6 months, and you can't have a greater revenue than $3 million per location to be eligible. So the checking out eligibility is something, probably the first thing. If you see a grant that you think could be great for your business to do climate resilience or to do adaptation, first check how are you eligible, and that's usually in the easy to find on a website. Next slide, please. So there are too many grants out there to list all of them, but we wanted to provide at least a few direct examples. Amazon offers a grant program for small businesses. You need to have an Amazon business account. That happens to be a slightly bigger one at up to $25,000. Comcast has a program helping small businesses recover from challenges similar to the pandemic or including the pandemic. Verizon offers a grant specifically for Hispanic-owned small businesses. To qualify, you have to complete at least 2 free courses and up to $10,000 in awards, or not in awards, but individually. And the National Association for the Self-Employed, so if you run an LLC or your own business, they have grants. You do have to be a member, but they have up to $4,000 grants for small needs. So these are just some examples of the things you can find on some of those aggregator websites. You might also be eligible, and we'll get to this, for help from us if you are in one of the North Central counties for free. And there are lots of other services, NGOs, and the state, of course, out there to provide technical assistance as you search for help. Next slide, please. So we're still on grants, and you may say, why are you talking about USDA? Well, USDA has grant programs as well. You probably are more familiar with their loan programs, but they offer a variety of financial assistance programs designed to boost rural businesses. You can click through the link. This one is again an umbrella one. There's a lot of different programs under the Rural Development Business Programs at the USDA. So renewable energy, you can get funds for energy efficiency improvements, working on lowering the cost of energy. It's really worth it to go look through here. I'll go through just a few. Let's see, so the REAP program, so that one's both loans and grants, agricultural and rural small businesses for rural and renewable energy like solar and energy efficiency or energy systems. So if you have a location and you wanted to lower your energy bills and you put in software and you upgrade your panel, or you need to you're renovating the building envelope, anything that you do basically that's a renovation can work under this, as well as some other programs, because when you build your building better, you have lower energy costs, but you're also contributing to resiliency because you are requiring less energy from the utility, or even requiring less so that you can produce it yourself. There's a million options here, and they sound expensive, but there is help. So there's that program. There's the Rural Business Development Grant. It's closed now. It opens in winter, I believe, or it was open last year. It was due in February. That money can be used for projects that benefit rural areas or towns outside of the urbanized periphery of any city with a population of 50,000 or more. So you should check through and see if where you are is eligible if you are outside of the Albuquerque area. And there's the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program. So that's about improving the condition of rural areas by helping individuals and businesses to start, expand, or improve rural cooperatives and other mutually owned businesses through cooperative development centers. And then I'll get to loans a little bit more. I think folks have probably heard of USDA loans more than grants, but briefly to talk about why one would get a loan from the USDA instead of just from the bank. They are insured by the federal government. It means less risk for lenders, so lenders like them. You have flexible credit requirements, better pricing, better terms. You can have a lower cost of capital. There's a variety of uses here, right? You don't have, they can allow for expansion of your business or equipment or land purchases, all of that. And some of these loans can be forgiven as well. So if you're going to the bank and you think that they have a rate and you don't like it, you might check out USDA first. And then I just mentioned quickly the Agriculture Innovation Center program, which gives you technical assistance if you're an agricultural producer, and help with your marketing and your development and a variety of different things. These are loans that are up to $1 million, but that is not open right now. You have to check back to see. I believe I talked about REAP. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide, please. All right, and then there's LEADA, the Local Economic Assistance and Development Program, a funding program out of our state and out of the Fed's economic development at the Economic Development Department. It funds projects that produce sustainable outcomes. So it reimburses the applicant for the work done and the costs incurred. It's a reimbursement grant. You have to spend the money. It's not just to get the money. It's $5,000 to $25,000 a year. And you are doing, it's providing you an incentive to do development, right? As I said before, it's important to check the eligibility on any program. You have to have an up-to-date community economic development plan. The Local Economic Development Act has to apply, and then your effort should include both public and private participation. So this is one of those cases where you can benefit if you're working for or with your local government. And then you need to contact a local rep here. There's 6 different districts. The Las Vegas rep, for example, is Tim Hageman, and you can go to the website and see the map and see who you need to contact if you're interested in learning more. Next page, please. Okay, I already started talking about loans, but I'll keep talking about loans here because there are lots of different options for resilience and adaptation funding. So let's see. So I'm going to go over 3 examples of loan funding through government programs. These resources can help businesses during times of disaster or during, as they can help in terms of adaptation and resilience, right? They can help in before a disaster strikes to make you less prone to the problems of the disaster, or they can help after. So we'll talk about a couple different ones here. The SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans, or the EID loans, the Smart Money Business Loan Participation Program, and the CPACE program, which Adelante runs. So first we'll talk about the program at SBA. This is where you look up if you're in a disaster declaration area. So it has to be a declared disaster. Some of you may be familiar with this already, similar to other disaster funding. The first payment for this loan is deferred for 12 months. The interest rate won't exceed 4%. It's up to 30 years with a repayment term determined by the ability to repay the loan. So this is again, could be forgiven. These loans are really helpful, and these are the kind of loans that get close to a grant, right? Eligibility for this program, you need to have substantial economic injury to your business. So you need to be able to show that. You have to be, again, located in the disaster declaration area. And you have to be unable to obtain credit elsewhere. I'm not sure exactly what the requirements are there, but it's worth looking through. There's an online application. You can click the link in the slide. When you go through that, the website will first have you enter where you are to see if you're in a disaster, a declared disaster location, and then you can move forward if you are, and if you are not, it may be that it's still pending, right? If there's a recent wildfire flooding situation, or a extensive other issue, that the disaster, you may have to wait for the declaration to get the funds. So moving on to the next slide. We have the Smart Money Business Loan Participation Program. Just another example of a loan program. Again, just I'm gonna say it's like every slide, but there is way more out there than we could possibly do in a presentation. But these are some good examples, and hopefully a variety, enough of a variety of financial resources that they can cover, that maybe you think, I can't really, that's not really helpful, but that one might be helpful. So in this case, we have a program that aims to provide access to capital for businesses throughout rural and underserved areas of New Mexico by allowing the Finance Authority to purchase up to 49% of loans. So this is I think this is a great option if you're already burdened by a lot of debt, but you want to make changes to make your business lower cost, more sustainable, more resilient to disaster, etc. So what they do is they have a loan that's up to 25 years at another low fixed interest rate, and as it says on the slide, you can get up to 49% of your loans bought by them, so that you're paying, instead of paying a bunch of higher rates to different people, you can consolidate essentially and pay one lower rate. Okay, next slide, please. Great, so now I want to talk briefly about the New Mexico CPACE program. We administer the CPACE program for the state, and I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then we're gonna see if the video will click through, and if not, maybe we'll open up the YouTube. So CPACE stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. It is a financing program to help provide commercial property owners with access to long-term fixed rate financing for a different range of energy efficiency, renewable energy, water saving, and resilience improvements to commercial properties. So yeah, let me play that video. Let's see if that will go, and I'll continue to explain it after. I can't hear the sound. Well, maybe I can just explain it, since I don't think the sound is coming through. But oh, we're gonna. Yeah, I think sometimes that can be difficult to get the sound to come through the video into the webinar, and maybe it is on and I just can't hear it. So if you wouldn't mind, Brianna, pausing, great. Thank you. So CPACE, what does CPACE do? It covers projects like, let's just do the example of, you want to put solar panels on your commercial building. CPACE can cover 100% of the solar panels. Let's say you're building a new multifamily housing over 5 units. CPACE can cover the building envelope, the water systems, if there's water saving systems like taps that turn off, the energy systems if they're more efficient, the HVAC if it's a heat pump, for example. And it is similar to some of these other programs where you have a long-term fixed rate loan, and that loan means that you're paying, instead of having to pay those big capital outlay costs at the beginning, you have a lower cost of capital, and projects can get started quicker. And this is just one more mechanism in your stack, in your capital stack when you build. But it also applies to renovations, and so that's where it sort of comes in. If you have property, it can be agricultural property, it can be commercial property, it can be industrial zoned, and you want to, you have renovations to do, you can still apply for CPACE funding up to 3 years after your renovations. And often your renovations can cover a lot of that, because most renovations, most changes that you can make to an old building make it more energy efficient, or can use renewable energy, or have some improvement that is also a sustainability thing. And so CPACE really is about sustainability and resilience. And there's a number of different ways that it makes you more resilient to have this kind of property. Whether it's just having more cash flow, or whether it's, if you were to create a solar battery backup system, then you have power when, say, Forest Service or the state has to shut off a power line because there's a fire hazard, right? So it can, and that could help increase your bottom line for your business. So what else do I want to say about CPACE? So I think the major thing I want to say, and to explain what it is, we'll start with this. In order for there to be CPACE financing available in your area, you have to have the county, so the county has to have enacted it. Bernalillo County so far has enacted it in the city of Albuquerque. And it's, the process has begun in a number of other counties, but it's worth, if you want this kind of financing, it's worth you reaching out to your county commissioners and saying, my business, like, I need help doing this, and this is one of these programs that can help me. So I would, appreciate you supporting passing this. The reason that the county needs to pass an ordinance to enact this is because CPACE means that we've signed off, we've checked off that these are CPACE eligible improvements, so that an engineer has reviewed it, and in the real estate transaction process that there's been a number of eligibility requirements met. And so our job is to make sure those requirements are met, and then that is recorded at the county office. And so the county does need to record this, and then this becomes something that comes right after your taxes, so in terms of repayment priority. So it is a very secure loan for the lenders, so that is why, and it benefits the property. It means the property has higher value, higher sale value, higher value to its owner, because it has lower costs to maintain it. So all these things add up to something that's a benefit for counties, something that's a benefit for local businesses, and something that banks like, because these are very low risk properties. So there's only been one default since this began in the early 2000s across the country. And at least at the time of that report, I think that was like by 2019. So maybe there's another one, but there's been billions of dollars of CPACE loans out there. And it's in Texas, it's in California, it's, I want to say, in 30 something or 40 something states, and we just got it in New Mexico. So let's see, if you have more questions about CPACE, again, because it's only available in Bernalillo County so far, but if you want it in your area, definitely reach out to our colleague Eric. His email address I'm putting in the chat, and let's see if this is working. Great. It's info@nmcpace.com, and you can also check out that website to learn more. And yeah, I'll move on to the next slide. So we want to briefly make sure that you're aware that there are tax credits and incentives related to adaptation and resilience. Again, we're not tax experts, but I think we all feel like it would be a waste if we don't take advantage of the benefits of the tax code. So just gonna briefly talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of tax and other programs. So these opportunities help offset costs and invest in growth for your business. So let's see, the conservation and preservation tax credits are for energy conservation and efforts to preserve or conserve New Mexico's cultural, agricultural, and natural resources. You can click through to learn more about that tax credit. The rural job tax credits are for employers who have been approved by the Economic Development Department for job training and to create qualified jobs where there's low population density. So that's another one you can click through to learn more about. The New Mexico, the New Market Tax Credit Program is a federal program that's designed to provide businesses in rural or low-income communities with greater access to capital. So that's a similar capital program, that's a program that you can learn more about by clicking through and mix it up with another one. So then we have the high wage jobs tax credit. So this applies for businesses that have jobs that have high wages in New Mexico. That's defined as 40,000. I think it depends on the business, but it's worth looking at. Then we have the Local Economic Development Act, LEDA funding. I think we mentioned that already, but that can be used to provide tax breaks, loans, and grants, improving transportation, utilities, other infrastructure that then, of course, makes things easier and cheaper to operate. Then we have JTIP, the Job Training and Incentive Program, and it funds classroom and on-the-job training for newly created jobs in expanding or relocating businesses for up to 6 months. It reimburses 50 to 90% of employee wages. I'm sure a lot of businesses who would be watching this have already heard of the JTIP program. We have utilized the JTIP program. It's been great. And I think that, it makes sense to make sure that you're aware of these programs, make sure if you are eligible, it's worth checking out. Because, when there's resources out there and you need them, why not try? Let's see. And then I'm just gonna emphasize one more time that tax credits and incentives, you're gonna want to talk to your accountant or your tax professional to make sure that you are getting all the new ones. There's been quite a few changes in the code, especially considering the Inflation Reduction Act and previous changes to the tax code over the last half decade. So, moving on to slide 46. So we talked a little bit about tax professionals. We do want to reiterate that there is technical assistance for climate and sustainability and resilience, adaptation, these kind of issues around here in New Mexico. And whether it's from the state or from NGOs, there are folks out there who want to help you succeed in making your business more resilient and more adaptive, considering our changing climate. Next slide, please. So to tell you a little bit about our services, I especially mention this because we can provide grant writing, technical assistance, some of the help you might need through a contract we have with North Central Economic Development District, completely free of charge to you if you are working with a public institution on a public-private project or a grant-funded project. What do we do in terms of economic support? So again, we're an environment and climate firm, but in that area, we have a lot of experience in helping folks get projects off the ground, helping folks develop project outlines. If you want to reach out to North Central, we can give you information there. I want to make sure that our information is in the chat. And then, so this is my email. And if you are in one of those counties, like I said, Santa Fe, Rio Arriba, Taos, Colfax, Mora, San Miguel, Los Alamos, and Sandoval, and need a place to start, you can make that inquiry and we can see if we can help out there. And then I wanted to also put a couple of resources in the chat here. One is if you are not sure how you are impacted by the climate, you can, okay, I think I gotta send it to everyone. There you go. And here's, here, let me get some of the email addresses here. So Eric's is for CPACE, and mine for technical assistance. And then the climate action, so that's the Climate Change Bureau at the state government, and it's worth looking at their adaptation and resilience plans to get ideas. But another resource, this is from 2022. This is a in-depth study and explanation of climate change impacts on water resources over the next 50 years. It's worth reading if you're concerned about water. And then you can, of course, look at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. You can look at EPA and the Drought Monitor, also the South Central Climate Science Adaptation Center for local data to understand, because to understand how many above 95-degree days can you expect in the summer, or to understand, other kinds of direct impacts that you might feel, so you can start to think about how to respond to them. So there's a lot of resources out there, and that's something else we can do. I'm going to now turn it back over to Brianna, I believe. Actually, I think we have one question slide here. I'll let her take over again. Thank you, Brianna.
Yes, thank you, Maxine. So this concludes the presentation, and this next part that we wanted to do was just kind of like an exercise to get people to think about, small business owners to think about what we discussed in this presentation already and how we can apply it to different scenarios. So what can businesses do to address common climate impacts? So we have an example where we have different scenarios and different potential actions that small business owners could take if they found themselves in this scenario. So our first scenario is heat-related disruptions. So lower tourist visitation due to climate-related factors like wildfires or extreme heat. Some potential actions that people or small business owners could take if they were facing this is to diversify customers. So maybe they focus on local residents moving forward, like in their business, just like transition so that way they're not solely reliant on tourists. Another potential action that small business owners could take is to partner with local businesses for a joint promotion and events, perhaps. Another action would be to develop energy efficient practices to reduce operating costs, just as a way to lower the operating costs associated with the business. And the actions that small business owners could take are unlimited, and they are really they really rely on the creativity of small business owners. And if you're a small business owner, you're already creative by default. So really, while these are just a couple of actions, the world is your oyster. So really, any sort of creative solution that you come up with can definitely help your business. So on to the next scenario, we have a scenario of water availability. So increasing water scarcity and rising water costs impacting expenses and customer satisfaction. So some potential actions that a small business owner could take: exploring alternative water sources. So maybe it might be a worthwhile investment to start collecting rainwater for your business, so that way you're not as affected by water scarcity. Another action could be to implement water saving technologies like a water recycling system. Another action would be adjusting business operations to reduce water consumption. So, for instance, if you have a car washing business, maybe you can present a car wash package that is focused on using less water consumption. Another action would be to explore government incentives and financial assistance for water efficiency upgrades. Like when we talked about the CPACE program, like maybe that would be a worthwhile to look into for your small business. And then the last scenario that we have for you today is like with increased wildfire risks impacting business operations and customer experiences. So, really, like I said earlier, like there isn't a way to 100% prevent the impacts of climate-related events, but there are ways to mitigate the effects of them. So, potential actions like this could include a review of current insurance policy to make sure you're covered in the areas that you need for your small business, and having a relationship with other suppliers to make sure that your business is still like functional or can still have the supply that it needs to be running, and having contingency plans for wildfire disruptions. So with that, that is the end. I want to thank everybody for joining, and a huge thank you to Maxine and Samantha for helping me with this presentation, going through this presentation, and also for Gloria, Gabriella, and Sophia for putting this presentation on, and the Spanish interpreters. So yes.
Thanks, Brianna. Thanks, folks. I think we would open it up for questions. It seems like we don't have any right now, but I think that folks are welcome to follow up with us at the emails in the chat if they have questions about any of this, and I believe we'll provide the slides to MBDA so that if you want to click through links, you actually can. You don't have to guess.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Brianna, Maxine, Samantha, for the presentation. Was great. A lot of information and great resources. Just to make sure in the presentation we have your contact, right? For each of the, or if no, I don't think so.
Nope, it's not in the presentation. We'll change that for tomorrow. But
yeah,
I'm in the chat. My email is in the chat, as well as reaching out to Eric for CPACE. So those two emails should be there. And Paul is me, and Eric is info@NMCPACE.
Since we will distribute in the presentation, I mean, tomorrow or later today, I don't know if you can, include that as part of the presentation, so other businesses in the future have it. I will really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And tomorrow we will have these beautiful ladies in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Mexico. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Gloria will be hosting. So
yes,
hopefully it will be a great experience.
yes. We have so many of our businesses are going through a lot of what you discussed today. The insurance and part of it was a huge issue at one of our last meetings, and so you'll probably get questions around that. But a lot of our businesses have either been told that they're no longer going to be covered, or their rates have gone up from say 3,000 a year now to 9,000 a year. A lot of the so insurance brokers are finding it difficult to look for insurance coverages in Las Vegas at this time because of the flooding. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gloria. We'll do what we can to answer some questions if that comes up. That's absolutely we've heard about that and experienced it ourselves to a degree or another. So yeah. It's there's a lot of challenges to overcome.
Well, good. Thank you so much for the information. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Gloria.
Everyone, and have a great afternoon.
You too, Sophia. Take care.
Bye.